What's going on YouTube? As you can see, we're going to be talking about the OPO2 meta. I am so looking forward to this. I have done too many games in OPO1. I'm kind of tired of the format. It was a hell of a lot of fun. Miami was amazing. I have one more OPO1 tournament, like big one, coming up on Sunday. It's for a case of OPO2. Um, so looking forward to that. I might do some videos based on the games that we play, doing some coverage of it as well. But in the meantime, we're going to be talking about OPO2, and obviously I can't talk about OPO2 without talking about the meta behemoth that is Zoro. I'm going to say right off the bat, week one, either get on board with it, learn how to play the mirror, or play green, because this deck is going to be everywhere. Exactly how it was week one of OPO1, where the metagame was like 50% red. Here it is again. But this deck is actual nuts. Like, I can't even say like, oh, just play green and you'll win. Like, it's not guaranteed at all. This is not free. It's actually really fucking hard. So what changes? Consistency. You're basically like every other deck that existed in OPO1 that was using like searchers. You had access to Momo and Bonnie in green. Well, guess what, bitches? I can do that too now because I have Curly Dot on. So this card, I can't look at it, but this card searches the top 5 for any red 1-drop, which we have plenty. These values are not set in stone. The only thing I will say, I don't recommend playing more than like 1 or 2 chopper at most, because you can actually play the aggro plan and stay aggressive, and you don't need to waste slots on trying to deploy blockers to defend yourself, because your 1-drops are going to be wiped off the board anyway. Like, what are you saving a 1-drop with a chopper for? Doesn't make sense. And the upgrade is fantastic because it's literally just uncommon, common, uncommon, and a rare. And then the 3 Whitebeards, of course, they're looking to be this set's version of Zoro, where he's like $30 on TCG Player. I think he actually went up to 40 for people who are trying to scalp early, which is fucking nuts. But good thing is, you only need 3. You can maybe get away with playing 2 if you can't get your hands on a couple of copies early and just slot more Luffy. Where I were a little different than what you probably heard, I'm already teching because, again, it's a metagame, guys. Things evolve over time. There's no one deck for every situation that wins every time. You have to adjust, right? So if you have Kine'mon players or kid players, because those are going to be something that you'll still see if you can't get all your the cards right away. They're teching ACOS Kid. In fact, Control Kid, which I'll show in a second, is running 4 copies of ACOS Kid. Because before this Luffy edition, we have no way to actually hit that son of a bitch. There's no unblockable rush. We just have, what we already had, Otama Pistol. Now we have access to Gordon Pistol, which is nice too. But that's it. So this extra copy of Luffy is just really good for getting that last bit of damage or killing a kid without having to worry too much. So really liking this build. This is adapted for the meta. You can always change these values. I mean, NA is going to do it regardless. Y'all can probably play Nami, the 1-drop Nami that gives you Don again and looks foolish. But by all means, play with the numbers if you want to, but this is tried and true, fantastic build. I'll probably be showing that next in our gameplay section. Kine'mon, like the actual most busted deck in my opinion. Like Zoro's there obviously, but like Kine'mon's just stupid. The fact that I can go Kine'mon ability on the draw, which means I go second, use 2 Don to play turn 1 Okiku. You know how oppressive that is? How hard that is to get around? It's fucking bonkers, guys. So get used to seeing this. Turn 1 Okiku is going to be a menace. I think it's going to be the best deck in the format, kind of like how Kid was, but definitely a lot more wide open. Like Kid isn't going to be like 50% of the metagame share, or Green isn't going to be 50% of the metagame share and winning most events. I actually think this meta, in comparison to set 1, is a lot more wide open. but I will call it like I see it and say these are probably the most two overtly powerful decks, just because they have access to just broken shenanigans. I should probably say, like, this Makino is the Otama of this set, where it's just insane value. It's a 2k counter that you can tutor, or it's endgame damage. It makes your Nami a 6k. It can make your Sunny Kuns a 7k. With just herself. One Don on your leader and just the Makino in play, that's massive damage. This Magra acts as a on-play one-time only version of that ability, but like, you can pump out some big numbers. And then green, like I said, just they're cheating the curve, which is so stupid. Just being able to slam her turn 1. You can even go turn 1 Raizo, and then turn 2 activate a Bonnie or a Momonosuke, search for a card, and then draw a card immediately on your first attack of the game with Raizo. And then let's talk about probably one of the best cards in the set. If you guys want to see like a top 5 cards in the set, I'll do that. But this is definitely my pick for either 1 or 2, is this Yamato. This card is fucking bonkers. 4 cost 6k, so she's on curve stats. There's no loss in stats for her ability. On play, rest a 6-drop or less. Let that sink in for a second, guys. She's a 4 cost 6k, rest a 6-drop or less. That is unfair. So even if I'm on the play, like someone made me go first, I can still go like 1 drop and then just bam, turn 2, play a 4 cost 6k that rests something. So it's basically my Cat Viper, which you'll notice is absent from this deck because you don't need it. You don't need any copies of that card at all, because this card is the massive upgraded power creep version of it. And then obviously I can't talk about Kine'mon without talking about the new Odin card. This card is bonkers as well. He's Kid on a body, so you can double attack with him for 3 Don without having to discard a card, and have 8k stats naturally, which is just, oh my god. Oh yeah, but he's 8k, can't I just Otama Pistol? Yeah, you can, but then on KO he also searches up a 3 cost or less Wano country, so that literally reads, go find another Okiku. So this card is fucking stupid, guys. We are running a 1 copy of ACOS Kid. Like I said, red can still be scary. Like, I still think green is favored, but it's definitely not a free matchup by any means, by how fast this deck can attack you. And then they also have their own top end, which is stupid as hell with this Whitebeard. Just giving you that defensive ability of keeping your leader at 7k on your opponent's turn, and then attacking and having Robin's effect. So like, you lose all your trump blockers in green. Sorry. Oh, I'm showing you too much stuff. So losing your trump blockers in green, and then they can race you down before you win the game or get control of the board. So having this 1 copy of ACOS Kid is, in my opinion, necessary. And because green, again, is going to be so popular, that's why we have these familiar faces here. You need to be prepared for the mirror. In the same way, red, you need to learn how to play the red mirror. You definitely need tech to fight the green mirror, because it's going to be everywhere as well. These 2 X-Drake help with this red matchup. It literally kills every card in their deck that isn't Luffy or Whitebeard. So that's why I like having the 2 X-Drake. This law can be anything. I just threw this list together really quickly with just some of the staples of the deck. Killer blockers, we have blockers for days. And then this Toki blocker, I'm on the fence, but I'm trying it out just because it's been seeing a lot of, it was seeing a lot of success before the rotation to set 3. But she's only has blocker if you have a Kozuki Odin. So that's either the 8-drop or your 4-drop Yamato. Because her ability is still like the 5 cost. Her name is treated as Kozuki Odin as well. But other than that, your standard green affair of cards. We're playing Puck Gibson. We're playing, obviously, Bonnie. Help us search some of this top end. Can find 2k counters in the clutch. So yes, we're still playing Bonnie, Beige. That's going to be core, I think, for as long as set 1 and starter decks are like legal, or if we don't have a rotation in the game, this is definitely going to be what you see the most every time a green comes out. My boy. So if you remember my last tier list video, like months ago when the set first dropped, I said Whitebeard was gonna be kind of poopy tier. Well, that was before I learned how to play the deck, both versions of this deck, correctly. Those of you who are trying to like blow your load early and not take any damage and drop like 9-drop on curve while having like 2 life or something like that, you're playing the deck wrong. That's not what he's there for. In fact, in my other version of the deck, I don't even play him, but he is there to end the game, not to survive. Which this deck is definitely not trying to do. As you can see, like we hear balls to the wall, red aggro. We're still playing Makino, Nami. We're running a lot of 2k counter just to stay ahead of our opponents so that we can just rush them down. We're playing Monkey D. Luffy on curve. We don't care if you have blocker. I don't care if I have extra Don. I'm slamming him, attacking you for 6, attacking you for 6, attacking you for 6 with these big fat bodies here. This deck you could play on the draw, on the play, and it's the same thing. Like, this deck is nuts. You're just curving out. You might look at this. This is why I call this version of the deck Jankbeard. Like, why are we playing so many vanillas? It's just stats. That's all we're doing with this deck is stats, damage, and then countering out with our obscene 6k stat. Which doesn't sound like a lot, but it changes the math entirely, guys. This is the version of the deck that actually puts the most pressure on Zoro. Because I'm gonna give you a little secret, guys. The way you attack Whitebeard isn't trying to attack 8k because I'm at 6k and trying to make me blow counters. That's not how you do it. You just have to ping him. Attack for 6. Zoro actually does it the best. This is why I like this version of Whitebeard the most. Or I'm sorry, this version of Whitebeard the most because I can race you. In the boat version, it's a little harder, but in this aggro version, while you're just trying to ping me for 6 and get me to blow all my cards in my hand, I'm going to race you just as fast. And it's harder for you to trade board with me than it is for me to trade with you. So these big bodies that just keep turning sideways every turn becomes too hard for red to deal with. And it actually doesn't do that bad into green either, coincidentally. Which is why I like this deck for week 1. This is my week 1 version of Whitebeard. And then as, you know, things start to settle down, people like aren't just playing Zoro and being weebs, you can actually switch it up. But I'm a big fan of this for week 1. This Zerg beard, Jank beard, straw hat beard, whatever you want to call him, is just the nuts in my opinion. Just being able to put that pressure on your opponent early while people especially aren't going to know how to tackle the deck and play correctly is my favorite. And like I said, once things settle down, however, then I can play a bit more mid-range and mid-slower. I actually like this version for the mirror match into the Strawbeard, or even just whatever kind of janky list people are going to try with Whitebeard, because they're not going to know how to play correctly. Because like I said, you're not trying to stall, you're not trying to control your opponent and stay ahead with 1 life with like the 9-drop. You're going to 0. At the end of the day, no matter how long the game goes, you're going to go to 0 with Whitebeard, and that's okay. So get used to being at 0 life, 1 life. It doesn't matter. That's not how you're supposed to play the deck. You need to be a man. You're the world's strongest man for a reason. So in this version, we're obviously leveraging Moby Dick, being at that low-cost life threshold, so that we can have free 2 Don attached to everything on our turn, basically. So this becomes a 9k. Ace is a 9k rush. Your Atmos 4Ks are 4k or 4-cost 8Ks. Marco's a 7k. So like I said, it's just these extra 2 Don. So every character you have on board is almost like you're cheating Don every turn. So offensively, at the late game, this deck can kill you out of nowhere. And the caveat, you also can survive a lot. I have had people try and end the game by like killing a Marco blocker, a Bartolomeo, sorry, and trying to swing me for like upwards of 15k, 20k. I've survived a 20k hit, guys, because this Radical Beam plus our life being our power being at 6k, it adds up. So between 2 Radical Beams and a guard point, I'm already at 17k. Any extra 2k counters I have in my hand or 1ks that I didn't get to deploy earlier in the game just become so good. It's so hard to deal with this in the late game that if like you didn't kill me yet, you're dead. These Marcos are so sticky. Just being able to discard extra Moby Dicks, any of these Whitebeard event cards that I didn't get value off of, they just become, you know, a free counter off my Marco blocker, basically. So this deck has some serious legs. Again, another deck you're going to have to get used to playing, both as the Whitebeard player and against, because if you're wasting Don and not deploying to the board to try and swing 8 at me or something like that, you're blowing momentum. Just ping him for 6. Ping him for 6, try and make him blow all the cards in his hand early. That way, when you do a big swing late game, all I have left are Radical Beams and guard points, and those only last for so long, you know? So I think this deck is very strong, but if you know how to play it correctly or play against it correctly, it can still be kind of tough. But it is nice to have 2 angles of attack, so you can actually keep opponents guessing on which version of Whitebeard you are. And then my end of like what I consider to be the meta threats is going to be Kid. Again, this is something I just threw together. The main points to take away, we are playing 4 8-drop, 4 Punk Gibson. This is full-on control. You want to stay ahead of your opponent's board. We are teching in Yamato, but other than that, there's not a lot of new stuff here. This is for your red-heavy metagames, which is why we're playing this. Because like I said, this version of Zoro isn't running many unblockable anything anymore. They have Otama, etc., but like you have 4 copies of this card in this version of the deck. So this control style of Kid is actually not that bad at all. This actually Yamato is just something you can try. It's not terrible against the green mirror, as we've seen, like just being able to play that stupid derpy version of playing where you don't do anything for a couple turns, you don't attack your opponent, you just try and clear. Yamato can definitely put the beats late. She's also really good against red. Again, if you can get them to commit most of their removal early and drop her late, you deny red their resources, and that's another way to win there. So again, Yamato behind ACOS Kid is a pretty annoying thing to experience, I'll tell you. So this is Control Kid. If you don't get the cards you need for your Kine'mon deck, or if you find it very difficult, just run this. Get 3 copies of the rare, which shouldn't be that expensive, and you're good to go. Not much to say here. It's just the same control style of Kid. You want to keep the board, deploy 8 costs, and do your thing. This was a Singapore list. I don't like it too much just because you're not that favored into a green mirror match, in my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's just how I'm like looking at the numbers right now. My other favorite deck of the meta, like if I could pick some decks that I would want to play, this would definitely be my top 3. This is definitely a more recent adaptation in Black. A lot of people weren't playing some of these cards I'll talk about, which is why like I'm liking it a lot more now. So you have some tech against Whitebeard with this Smoker. He cannot be KO'd by effects, which is one of the best tags in the game. This line of text alone denies red so much value that it's just amazing. So this Smoker 3 cost 4k cannot be KO'd by effects, and when he attacks and your opponent has a 0 cost in play, he gets +2. So against Whitebeard, this is what I was trying to say before, like you just want to ping them for 6. That's all you need to do. So you could put 1 on your leader, use your Smoker's leader effect, reduce something by 1, like a 1-drop or something, and then activate this Smoker's ability to attack for 6. And you get a very aggressive, like mid-range Black deck that I like a lot. I think this is going to be, now that people, I mean, they learned to play it kind of late in the game, but like now that this kind of build exists and people can see it early enough, I actually think Black can establish itself as a really good place in the metagame early. Helmeppo is just a value card off your life. Otherwise, I think he's just a counter. Because again, red is an interesting matchup into Black. Like you can put a lot of pressure on them because a lot of their value comes from discarding the cards like Kobe and Sakazuki to get these removal effects, or having to do like some cost reduction before you can do things like Meteor Volcano. most of the time you're 2 for 1ing. So what I mean by 2 for 1 is you're doing another card's effect, or discarding a card for your card to be played to get their value. So yeah, you're killing stuff on board, but you are also giving up hand advantage. And against aggressive red decks, that can be kind of scary. Which is why I like this edition of this Smoker. We've always had this Borsalino, which is just broken in my opinion. It's one of the best cards in black. Most of the times I've ever lost to black is because they established like 2 of this card. This can't be KO'd, and it gets a plus 1k on your opponent's turn, so it becomes a 4-cost efficient blocker with 6k on your opponent's turn. That you can't Jet Pistol, you can't Otama Robin it, you can't do like Seaquake stuff to it. Like there's no way around it unless you force them to block, or you make them block and then you can swing into it after. And this card, that's why this card is so freaking annoying. As well as this Smoker. So again, this version of black is a lot more aggressive than what I had seen, like control versions of the deck, which I'm not a fan of. Like this Smoker has double attack when your opponent has a 0 cost or less, and again, it's just on curve stats, 5 cost 7k. So it's already a lethal stat point that can't be removed and has access to a possible double attack late game. Sakazuki, just efficient removal with a really sizable body. Kuzan is your late game finisher, where he reduces everything by 5 and he can KO something on play. So he already gives everything -5 by having that static like aura effect, and then he can KO something 5 costs or less. And then he just makes all these other cards have like all their abilities turned on basically. Like your Smoker for sure will probably have double attack. Your Smoker will have 6k when he attacks. I mean, if you were able to establish a Monkey D Garp, when he has 2 down attached, he can KO a 0 cost or less. Your Meteor Volcanoes become 2 cost KO like anything, basically. So this goes on, when it hits the field, most of the time, like if you've been able to keep yourself up and establish your board, will win the game. We're not too heavy on the blockers, even though we do have access to 2 versions of 2 cost blocker, mainly because of the effects that exist in red. Robin KOs 3Ks or less, so she's already killing blockers. This Vista is killing blockers, so there's no point in trying to stuff like 8 copies of blocker in your deck if they're all going to die anyway. That's just my opinion, how I view it. So I think 4 to 5 is probably okay. That's why Zoro gets away with running 1. Like, you don't want this in the mirror. And you definitely don't want to see it against the red matchups. Green is always resting your cards anyway, so like blocker is not that good set 2. Like, it's really efficient now, but it's really mediocre once set 2 comes out. So, But black is definitely a lot better than I thought it was going to be, just based off the more recent finishes at the end of the metagame in Japan and Asia. Another amazing deck. I had an argument with some guy on Facebook on this. He tried to tell me that Doflamingo was still going to be the best set 2 blue deck, and that man is smoking crack, because this shit is broken. I would rather play this any day of the week than trying to play Dofi. It's just too slow, in my opinion, for things like this. I've never lost against Dofi with any of these 3 decks. But Ivankov, though, this deck fucks, bro. It does its thing. So let's go. We have Ivankov. I've gone over this in my video when I played him. You're at 0 cards, you draw 2 cards. Why would you ever want to go to 0? Aren't you going to be losing? How are you going to defend? Yada, 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 yada. Well, you play defensive early so that you're at 4 to 5 life by the time the mid to late game comes. And then you get into a cycle of slamming 7-drop Ivankov and getting its value of being able to play your Monkey D. Luffy 6-drop, or just playing stats like Crocodile, or playing blockers if you need defense and these 2 4-cost blocker. Which, by the way, he's not even a 4-cost blocker all the time. Like, he can be offensive as hell. Because if you're a 1 card or less, Inazuma is a 7k, which is fucking broken. 4 cost 7k, guys. Just saying. So now we're cheating the curve of Dawn with abilities like that. We still have ways to answer endgame finishers. Opposing Ivankov decks, 7-cost Kid, which is still going to see play, because when you're playing green, you're going to have to still fight each other, like I said. If you don't put anything to fight the mirror against someone who does, I don't need to tell you who's going to win, right? The guy who teched. So you still have hits off these, but you definitely don't need that much anymore. 8-cost Kid can be an issue, but at the same time, this deck establishes board very quickly between these overstated cards and then being able to cheat to another 7k into play on curve, and then just filtering your deck. So once we start getting this draw engine going, these cards that filter to the top shoot up in value. Being able to, I'm going to Ivankov into Ivankov late, or I'll be able to Ivankov ability, draw the finisher cards I need to like get rid of a blocker or just the threat on board, are so good now. Where blue didn't have that ability to like not only set up, but like draw into your setup or have the pressure to do it like all at once. I think Ivankov is the perfect amount of it. Do I think it's the best deck in the format now? No, not at all. I just think it's definitely the best version of blue we've seen so far and can definitely keep up with some of the big boys. It might be considered off meta still, just because again, red and green, I don't think it's like an argument to say that they're still the best colors in the format, but blue can definitely keep up now, in my opinion. So for all you fuckers out there who keep disliking my videos because I don't like blue that much, I'm telling you there's a good blue deck, so go play it in set 2. I've loved playing this deck, so have fun with it. Real quick, I'll go over 2 cards. This is not an event deck. Don't try and stuff 4 Love Beams in your deck just because you're playing at 0 or like very low amounts of cards in hand. That's a way to lose the game. Just because you want to see the value off your characters. Ivankov doesn't do anything with events. Don't try and stuff 7-cost Croc in this deck. You're going to set yourself up to fail. NA players, please don't do it. I don't care how much you like the card, it sucks. But as far as our event package, this card bounces a 4-cost or less for 2, so it's just a way to clear blockers or threats. Like, if they have a Yamato or Kiku on you and you just want to stay ahead on board, just get rid of that shit. Make them play it again. For 2 Don, early or late is just fine, but again, we don't want to see so much of it, so we have it at 2. It is a nice trigger to have, potentially, to get rid of blockers on their turn, or just like a character they didn't attack with, etc. And then New Common Land is our stage. It's not like Onigashima or Moby Dick where we need to have this card, but it is nice to have it. So we're running it at 2. This lets you draw 1, discard 1, and then you can discard an additional 3 cards if you want to. That last line of text you don't really do. Trying to get your leader effect going very early is a surefire way to lose the game, because you still want to defend early. This is more or less late in the game. Like, let's say you drew 2 off of Ivankov and they were just duds, then you can use this effect, get rid of those cards so that you can see 2 more cards at the end of your turn. And then just filter. So like these cards that let you draw are set up the top of your draw. Now you have New Common Land to draw it right away. So this combination of effects lets you have like, okay, I'm looking at the top 5, setting up my next draw, and then I'm able to draw the card that I want immediately. So again, it's a good effect, but we don't want to see too much of it just because of the nature of the deck. The deck is working off itself to play characters, not events and stages, so you don't want to see too much of it. And you will see a fair amount of cards. Like, you will go through a lot. That's why 2 and 2, in my opinion, is enough. And then speaking of off meta, this came like middle of the pack. This version of Law is my favorite version of Law, and while I'll probably still keep playing it in set 2, it sucks against Zoro. I'm not saying that this version of the deck will beat Zoro, but it is still very strong. I showed off a deck list way back. It won a Japan championship with a very similar version of this. The only additions are this vanilla Zoro. Why? Because Whitebeard shits on Law. If you don't have tech for it, or if you didn't draw perfectly, or if they drew very poorly, that's the only way you're beating that deck. Like if they draw poorly and you just saw the nuts. Because again, hitting that 6K to try and beat them is very tough. And if you don't know, Law is a very Dawn tight, Dawn efficient deck. So we have to play like a poke style, but this Zoro will help us do that earlier in the game. That's why I like having it. It's something that they teched very late, but like I said, I like it a lot. We're running X Drake for every 3-drop threat in the game. Zoro, Zoro specifically. So it's very strong. Dadan gives us efficiency. Makino gives us more damage on top of this Brook to be able to do a lot of damage early, just poke, 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 and then recycle your effects with your bounce law. This 5-cost 6K law that just restands actually becomes even more valuable because of your rush effect, your 6 costs, or even your blocker law just to keep poking. This is a very like poke defense heavy version of the deck. We're running 11 2K counters. We're able to do combo effects to remove with Vista, which is even better than Robin. That's why we're not playing any version of that card. Vista is just efficient and better, and we get to rebuy its value later. So that's why I like this so much more. This is something I'm going to play around with. Again, not favored into Zoro. Is a very tough matchup still. But if your metagame is green or shifts to green, this can succeed very well. I've seen it. I've seen it in play multiple times. This deck is fucking nuts. And then finally, guys, I can't leave you purple players out. I don't think Kaido is good enough. I think it's very mediocre. It has some play into Zoro where you can like defend with things like Hell's Judgment, which gives 2 cards, so character or leader, minus 3K. Like it has defensive tools, but then you fold to Whitebeard. I've never lost a game into Kaido with Whitebeard. Don't care what you play against me, I will defeat you. And against Kine'mon, this Kozuki Oden just shits on you. So I'm not a fan of just mono purple Kaido anymore. I think it's just meh. It can win. It has won in Japan. I just think it's whatever. But here we are, Z. For all you control style players, this is definitely a deck for you. It is not easy to play or navigate because you are a 4 life leader in a meta game where Zoro exists. He will shit on you, but you do have tools. So you're obviously going to run max 2K counter. I think he's running 16, yeah. Just because you need to be able to keep yourself above that life threshold. Shiki kind of doubles as like a way to establish boards. Like if you hit him off trigger, you can play him and then trade. Because like I said, Zoro doesn't have a lot of big bodies until the late game. So you can trade with these 3Ks, the zeros, the 2Ks. So that's why Shiki exists, why we're playing him in there. You're not going to run the Impel Down package of like Hanya Bell for that kind of card, but it is just nice to have. And then we're running the extra 2K counters. Most of the time, again, these are just 2Ks. What you're going to do, though, the end game for Z, is we have Kuzan. This was supposed to be 2 king for Kuzan. I think that's too much. I'd rather just have the king since we have Sakazuki and Jack to try and ramp us a little. This isn't a ramp deck, by the way. You're not trying to shoot for ramp every turn. It's just something nice to have. Because you're not trying to Dawn minus yourself into oblivion. Like you still want to hit 10 with Z so that you can go Kuzan, attack with Z, use his leader ability, and then pop something. Because his ability lets you, when attacking, KO a 3 cost or less by doing Dawn -4, and he gets an additional 1k for the turn. So that's why Z is a very strong late game control deck if you know how to navigate the early to mid game so that you can get there and establish yourself. You're running the same amazing black cards. Kuzan is just a cantrip character. The cost minus is just okay. It's not like you have a lot of effects to take advantage besides Sakazuki King. But it's definitely a nice body to have. You want to play this deck on the draw. I will say Most of these decks prefer to be on the draw. Black specifically, Whitebeard, the boat version likes to be on the draw. Law, seeing an extra card is never bad, so I like it being on the draw as well. But definitely Z and Smoker specifically like being on the draw, just being able to go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Because if you can, like I said, when you hit 10, you're able to attack, activate the Dom minus effect. He's kind of like Crocodile in that way. Like where Croc wants to hit 10 Don so that they can start using their ability. You don't want to do it earlier than that because it fucks up your curve. And if you have to do it early, you're most likely losing the game anyway. But like I said, you're running the same strong black cards. Queen is just extra draw power, good stats for your blocker. It's the only source of draw you have in your deck, really, besides Kuzan. The 4 Impact Wave, I think it's okay. I mean, you need a lot of counter power in this deck, so Impact Wave isn't bad. He helps KO like 3 costs or less. But they have to be standing already. That's why I've never been a big fan of this card. You can play around this card. You can get value, especially early when people don't know what the fuck they're doing. Like, you will get caught off guard by Impact Wave, but for the most part, once people learn, you can play around it. But like I said, you'll still get some value. I don't know how I feel about 4, but it's definitely worth playing. And then other than that, that's it. So this isn't like a tier list video. I'm not going to rank everything, mostly because these decks are from an established metagame. NA is going to try and do their own funky shit regardless. If you remember, everybody thought Blurple Croc was the best deck in the format or was going to be an amazing deck, and it never turned out to do anything besides win like a local case tournament, which was nice for that guy, but other than that, that deck died immediately. So NA, have fun experimenting, but this is me just showing off some of the better decks that are definitely going to be at the forefront with some of the late adaptations that Japan, Asia had. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, showing off OPO2. I know everybody's trying to do their coverage now and give their explanations, but I want to cut to the point, guys, give you guys some concise, exact information rather than ramble on about like 25 minutes on why one deck was good in Japan or etc. Like, I'm just going to show you guys right away. These are the best decks of the format or have potential to actually win big top 8, top 4 locals and regionals, because regionals is right around the corner. Unfortunately, I didn't get into any of them, so good luck to everybody who's prepping for that now on the sim. But yeah, this is my take on OPO2. I hope you guys liked it. Peace.